So today our goal is to support your business growth by offering valuable insights and strategies to CPG companies exploring the potential of digital printing. Digital printing is a powerful tool that can grow your business by transforming your packaging approach and supporting your goals. But let it be known, this is not a sales pitch for HP, Zumbiel, Pratt Industries, or Taylor Corporation. Rather, we've gathered these leaders across the packaging industry to have an open conversation about the benefits, challenges, and opportunities that come with adopting digital printing for packaging. Our aim is to inspire you as decision makers to think about how digital printing can support your business growth by empowering brands to excel in promotional marketing, manage supply runouts, test market trial items, and enhance customer engagement. Throughout this session, we'll dive deeper into the key advantages of digital printing, focusing on the cost, quality, and assurance of supply. To start us off, allow me to introduce our panel of digital packaging leaders. First up is Trevor Schroeder, our digital technologies expert from HP. Trevor is the Director of Products and Solutions for HP PageWide Industrial Inkjet Packaging Solutions, which feature water-based ink technologies to drive efficiencies and reduce manufacturing costs for high graphics packaging applications. As Director of Products and Solutions, he is responsible for current and future products and ensuring that the solutions offer significant advantages to customers in this rapidly changing market. Welcome, Trevor. Can you share a bit more about your background and how your role contributes to HP's success in the industry?
Good morning. I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me today. My background is in printing technologies. My first love was the litho press in college, and from there explored the flexo markets for a number of years, and finally landed in the inkjet technology space, where the rapid changes in inkjet are just so fun to keep up with. The technology keeps advancing, and our customers keep finding new ways to have tremendous business and add new business value all the time to brands. So I'm excited to explore some of those topics today.
Awesome. Thank you, Trevor, for sharing that valuable perspective. We're really grateful to have you join us to share your experience with HP and how digital technology is paving the way for efficiency in packaging. So now to hear more about our paperboard packaging leader, Ed Zumbiel. Ed is the CEO of Zumbiel, a company with over 180 years of packaging experience. Zumbiel is the leading producer of paperboard packaging, specializing in innovative, high-quality, multi-pack solutions for differentiated beverage products. Under Ed's leadership, Zumbiel has become the first paperboard packaging company to adopt true production-scale digital print technology. Ed also serves as chairman of the International Packaging Group. Welcome, Ed. Can you share a bit more about your background and how your role contributes to Zumbiel's success in the industry?
Certainly, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone is comfortable in their offices as I am, being outside of the snow or inside from the snow. But my background and my love for digital is something that I have developed over the last 35 to 40 years. I've been in the packaging, in and around the packaging business, literally my entire life, running little printing presses on the shop floor as I was a kid and, summer jobs and stuff like that. But throughout the years, I've developed complete contempt for printing. That is for analog printing. It's odd to see a CEO of a printing company that hates printing as much as I do, but over the last 10 to 12 years, I've developed a love for digital printing. And the reason being is that there is so much clunky stuff going on with everything having to do with analog printing, from the art flow to the making of the plates to the make-readies of the machines on the shop floor, whereas digital eliminates everything, brings it all into a very controllable scientific form that's easy to comprehend, easy to understand, and easy to operate. So I am, in fact, a digital evangelist, although we do still have a lot of analog technology, but we're looking forward to the day when we have nothing but digital technology on the shop floor. So that's my background and my digital bent.
Well, thank you, Ed. I love the term digital evangelist. I would say that everyone on this webinar today would be considered a digital evangelist. So we're grateful to have you join us and share your experience with Zumbiel being in that family-owned company. And we're looking to hear more about your experience with paperboard. Now to hear more about our corrugated packaging leader, Sergio Morales. Sergio is the division general manager at Pratt Color, specializing in corrugated packaging products. The company produces high-quality, eco-friendly packaging, often using 100% recycled materials. A seasoned veteran in the packaging industry with over 20 years of experience, Sergio has made significant contributions, including pioneering the T1100 technology in North America. For the past 7 years, he has led the commercialization of high-volume digital printing on corrugated boxes. Currently, Sergio is at the forefront of Pratt's new national graphics division, Pratt Color. Sergio, can you share a little bit more about your background and how your role contributes to Pratt's success in the industry?
Yeah, thank you. Excited to be here. I think it said it very well, right? There are lots of advantages, obviously, of having a nice, beautiful printed box. I think for brands to be able to communicate to their customers, right? But the process of getting there today is always clunky. I got excited about digital technology when I started trying to figure out how can we service our customers better. And at the end of the day, that's what we all want to do, right? We want to delight our customers. And unfortunately, analog technologies don't do a good job of helping us delight our customers. They make us hate us, I think, right? There's all kinds of constraints that we put on them and everything trying to justify a setup, right? Long runs, long lead times, um, press checks. I mean, all kinds of things that just don't translate into an agile supply chain that's very responsive to our customers' needs. And that's where digital comes in. It doesn't solve everything, but it solves a lot of the things that constrain us in terms of allowing us to service our customers. And that's why I'm so excited about digital. And I think it's a transformative industry transformative technology that's definitely gonna change the way we go to market and we service our customers.
Awesome. Thank you, Sergio. It's obvious that you have a passion for digital printing. So I'm really excited to hear your insights on the panel discussion that we'll be having soon. So thank you very much for joining us today. Up next, we have Brian Batiste to share his insights as our flexible packaging leader. Brian Batiste's journey began at EPAC, where he was the first GM for that startup, which began in Middletown, Wisconsin, with the building of the first facility. In a quick 5 years, EPAC grew to 22 facilities worldwide. Wow. Brian has now been at Taylor for a couple of years, having been hired as the GM for the Digital Flexible Packaging Group, and most recently was given responsibility for the Analog Printing Group as well in North Mankato, Minnesota. Taylor Corporation provides flexible packaging solutions, including resealable and spouted pouches, customized to meet diverse industry needs. They focus on enhancing product protection, brand identity, and consumer engagement while offering eco-friendly options that support sustainability and long-term business success. Brian, thanks so much for joining us today. Can you share a little bit more about your background and how your role contributes to Taylor Corporation's success in the industry?
You bet. I would start off with just saying I'm really the outlier on this team here because I have the least amount of experience in printing compared to the other gentlemen on this call. I've only got the 8 years of experience, and that was through a greenfield project at EPAC. So they did not want to bring any analog printers into that company to begin it. They didn't want any bad habits, old habits, if you will, or analog thinking. So I've heard a lot of the other gentlemen have talked about the ills of analog printing, and they're all spot on. So all I really knew was digital printing. So I had no other choice but to adopt the technology, and we did that. And one of the cool things about that, or what I saw the value add being, is that there's immediate redundancy built into everything that we do with digital, right? There was a couple comments about that. So you can replicate everything we're doing, even inside your facility or when you need to add extra facilities, which clearly EPAC figured that out. We did that in a hurry. And at the same time, being totally disruptive to the industry, because now instead of as one gentleman mentioned earlier, hammering the customer for what our needs are internally, really what we need is a PDF, right? And you tell me what you want to put in the bag, and we can work together and figure out what those material structures need to be, and that's it. So we're not worried about cylinders or plates or cleaning or making any of those things or maintenance departments. We don't need any of that on the digital side. So it's a slimmed down, skinny version of a printing factory is what it comes down to. And what that does is allows you to leverage your speed and technology to do things quickly, right? I say this all the time to my sales team. We're not out selling flexible packaging. We're out selling lead time, right? And the ability for SMBs and even the CPGs, you want to do a trial marketing release, digital is the way to go, right? You want to go up to a mid volume with those releases, digital is the way to go. So it's all pretty exciting, that technology. And then echo again what the other guys were saying about analog printing. I recently was given the responsibility for all the analog printing here at Taylor. And it is kind of like going back into the 1950s, if I'm really being honest. And even this morning I'm covered in ink, right? So there are inherent challenges in the amount of people that it takes to do the same thing that you can do with one or two people on, in the digital arena is astounding, right? So, from a pricing standpoint, there's a lot of wins internally for a company. So I am 100% all in on the digital. I do see the value in analog, but I see more value in digital.
I love it. Thank you, Brian. It's a great insight, and I love that we have insights across all of these different packaging sectors and paperboard, corrugated, and flexibles. But now that we've met all of our panelists, let's dive into the heart of today's discussion. And to start, Trevor Schroeder from HP will share insights on major trends, digital's growth in packaging, and the key benefits that come with digital print. And all of this is with a focus on the digital technologies. So, Trevor, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Allie. So first, I wanted to cover these major trends as that backdrop to our discussion today. After I cover just this brief introduction on what we see happening in the market, then we'll go into Q&A with the panelists here today and have a conversation around what they see in their plants and in their businesses. And then from there, Allie, I think we'll accept any questions in the Q&A chat as well, right? So at the top of your screen, you'll see a Q&A button. Please submit any questions there, and we will review them and be more than happy to share them. So as your questions come up, please go ahead and put them in. So first, what we see, and this has been, some of these trends have been going on for quite some time, but agility and time to market is incredibly important for brands who need to be nimble. There can be trends overnight with new products or successful products that need to ramp in production. Likewise, consumer preferences can shift rather quickly away from other products, and so being nimble and responsive to those changing needs and market dynamics continues to be very important. In the e-commerce space, I think we all know this from our personal experiences ordering things online, but e-commerce continues to have a very fast long-term growth. It is accelerating from 10 to 15% and now expected to reach 1.3 trillion by next year. So the online boom of shopping, it reshapes those packaging needs. It requires visually appealing packaging and protective packaging solutions in particular, making sure that that product is making it from the factory all the way to the consumer to minimize those returns. From a sustainability perspective, this continues to be incredibly important to all segments. And we do know that 42% of millennials are willing to pay a premium for sustainable products and services. And by 2040, brands will seek solutions for the end of life and without compromising any of the performance along the way. Some of this is starting to become regulated in Europe. We do see Packaging Waste Reduction Act regulating the amount of void space in packaging as an example of this. And so both through regulatory as well as consumer demand, sustainability will be incredibly important. Rise of small brands. These small brands are very nimble. They can come in very quickly. And Brian, you made a reference to some of these small brands who are able to get started in digital, establish their supply chain, and really find what may be a niche initially, but then they can grow quite rapidly to become large and service a large consumer base. And automation for the factory automation is incredibly important. It's a key to solving some of the challenges that we've had in analog and digital. Not everything goes away. We still have to manage graphic files. We still have to manage production. But automation technology and capabilities with the advent of AI in particular is thought to help with some of those production aspects where you're handling complex jobs serially throughout a day in large quantity. So how do we keep our labor costs down? We tend to go to automation. And from a market perspective, this is a picture of all printed packaging worldwide, so quite large numbers. This is data from Smithers looking at the future of packaging printing out to 2029. This is a relatively new report, but what we see is growth in the packaging space. Packaging is a very healthy print segment overall, and it's broken down by a number of print technologies within that. Each have their own growth dynamics, depending on the process and depending on the markets and segments that they serve. But we do see the general industry, crystal ball, about 6% growth, compounded annually from 24 to 29. Digital is expected to grow much faster within that same time frame at about 14% compounded annually. So these are millions of dollars in current prices and exchange rate. Of course, with inflation, we need to also look at constant currency numbers, and there's some uncertainty in the macroeconomic space as well. So what can digital do for customers who have digital, and I should say my customer, but ultimately for manufacturers of packaging? Digital does help with short lead times. The ability to drive down a lead time for a product. In an industry where lead times are 4 to 6 weeks or sometimes even longer, this is a ripe space where digital can have key advantages to increase flexibility. On-demand capacity is another topic that we like to talk about, because as you have a production environment, a manufacturing ecosystem, being able to move jobs throughout the plant in a more efficient way is also very important. So taking short runs from analog printing, moving that to digital, and vice versa, allows the plant to become more flexible and can increase that overall capacity and utilization of existing assets and assets that you look to purchase in the future. Reduced waste, so reducing waste throughout the life cycle of the product. We like to think from a product from its cradle to grave all the way through the process. So being able to minimize inventory obsolescence is a key advantage to digital, and something that is very important to measure when adopting digital. So reducing the waste in the supply chain and in the factory are capabilities that become easier to manage with digital. And then freedom to make frequent and last minute changes. We know that as these consumer preferences change, so does the artwork. Regulatory drivers as well can be very fast requirements to change. We need a new label. We need to now change the artwork, and that creates challenges for analog printing if new plates are required or if there was a large amount of inventory. So being able to react to those changes efficiently with design and pre-press. And finally, appealing packaging. This is our goal, to have those high graphics boxes and appealing packaging that meets consumers' needs and brands' needs, can stand out on shelf, is what they expect it to be, so it's the right color, at least good enough for that consumer to then purchase. So appealing packaging remains very important for all brands. And our last slide here, Ali, is just a brief overview. This is not a complete portfolio slide, but I wanted to show the breadth and depth of the industrial print packaging segment within HP. So I represent the corrugated and paperboard presses on the right-hand side, but we have a number of assets in HP to help all segments and all markets. So there's a myriad of presses for every product out there, and I would encourage you, if you have any questions about any particular segment or process, please get in touch. We'll be happy to direct you in the right direction. So, Ali, with that, I'll turn it back over to you and to our panelists here. We're about to get started with our Q&A.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So just to start off, I'm gonna ask you all what kind of markets you serve and your primary applications or products to address those markets. We'll do this kind of popcorn style. Whoever would like to answer, feel free. So panelists, what markets do you serve? And give us a little introduction.
Well, I can start. Go ahead, Sergio. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. I figure I start first, so I have something to say at the end. But so we service a really high or a very diverse type of markets, right? Basically, anything that needs to be shipped will ultimately be on a box. So we and that includes graphic boxes. So we have some industrial applications and all the way to consumer packaged goods type boxes. I'd say a high volume or a very rich segment where a lot of our boxes end up at is everything that ends up on a club store. And that's just a function of the boxes needing to sell themselves, right? And they need a corrugated graphic box that's big enough to sell those large pack quantities. So a lot of graphic boxes in the club channel. Beverage is another area where the beverage segment where our boxes are there's lots of graphic boxes used. And the other segment that I'd say there's a lot of graphic use is in the do-it-yourself type stores. Similar story to the one of the clubhouse, right? The boxes need to sell themselves, and it's important to have a nice, appealing box that attracts customers.
Good deal. At Zumbiel, we're again the paperboard representative here today. Our primary markets are that of food and beverage. The biggest niche is that of carbonated soft drinks, your paperboard wraps for 12 packs, 6 packs, 8 packs, etc. We also do a lot of packaging for the beer industry as well as the food industry, and then also the confectionery industry. So really it's food, beverage, and candy, to make it simple.
At Taylor, we don't have one particular focus. I would say that 75% of our business is in the food industry, in every segment that was just talked about, actually, inside of the food area. But we do outdoors, hunting, fishing products as well. We're heavily into the cannabis packaging. And one of the things I always say is if you go to any department store or grocery store, you're going to see digitally printed flexible packaging in almost every aisle, if not every aisle.
Great, thank you. So Ed, I know the most about your story as we work together, but could you share a little bit more about what initially drove Zumbiel to adopt digital printing and what kinds of market opportunities or problems were you seeking to address by adopting digital?
Yeah, sure thing. Well, at Zumbiel, we operate very large format flexographic and lithographic equipment, and pretty much everything we do tends to be high volume. If you think of carbonated soft drinks in America, you can't go anywhere without finding soft drinks, and so that was just massive volume. We're always looking at the high volume, these little specialty drinks and stuff, not exactly our specialty all the time, but so anything that we were looking at in terms of digital had to be high throughput, and that was a problem. Sorry, Trevor, but we looked at things like the HP Indigo, 15, 20 years ago, and the volumes were or the capacity was so low and so slow that, like if you wanted to print 10 million promotional boxes for 12 packs on an Indigo, it would take you about 3,000 hours to complete the job versus a high-speed flexopress, which would do the same 10 million cartons in something like 90 or 100 hours. So that was one of the the issues that we struggled with initially. But we have always lived in a world of a lot of promotional packaging and high volume. So we had to have digital that could keep up with the needs of our customers, and that was tough. And then, of course, we being in the flexo world, printing plates and the preparation and the whole production process around flexo, it's very time consuming and it's very expensive. A set of plates runs anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000, depending upon the size and the number of square inches of the plate, et cetera. So that was always an issue with promotional printing, et cetera. So some of the problems that we addressed then with digital, once we got some technology about 5, 6 years ago that could not keep up with large format flexo presses, but could at least hold its own in terms of promotional printing, was that we were able to just achieve a speed to market that was unheard of beforehand. I mean, instead of taking 3, 4 days just to get art and things processed and plates made, we could do that in a matter of hours. And so that was our initial push, was the speed, and then also to streamline our operations, take cost out, manage inventories better, and still be able to hit like all the special colors that the brands demanded, and we had to do that with our first machine was a hybrid press where we have a combination of full digital as well as 7 flexographic stations where we could use those to hit the special colors. And then the other thing was to keep the cost down, which again was a good deal with the hybrid machine. In the beginning, we were able to, paint the sheet with the cheap flexo ink, and then add some variable data with the digital. So that was kind of the thinking, but also we just saw digital as the future in terms of cost efficiency, as well as being able to go after the variable graphics. And back in the day, everyone was all abuzz about share a Coke and the printing bazillions of labels with different people's names, et cetera. And I think the light bulbs went off for everybody, saying this is a good deal. Having 5 million boxes or labels all the same, it's good in some aspects, but there's probably a better way to do it. And so we were looking for the better way, and digital really did represent the better way for us. So I think that if that answers some of your question on as to what was pushing us into digital.
Absolutely. I appreciate that insight, Ed. Thank you so much. To get into really focus on the benefits of digital printing, Sergio, do you mind sharing a little bit about what benefits you believe that digital printing brings to the end customer? We're talking about minimum order quantities, turnaround time, assurance of supply. If you could get into some of the detail on that, that would be great.
Sure. Well, ultimately, I think the benefits to our end customer have to do with supply chain benefits, right? And I mentioned this in my introduction. The analog graphic supply chain for corrugated, I think, is shaped by lead times, right? So, I'm sorry, by setups, right? The setup cost, both Ed mentioned plates, right? The format of corrugated is bigger than that of folding carton, so that cost of plate is also significantly higher. And for a high-end job, you're going to pay anything between $10,000 and $20,000 depending what you're doing, right? So there's a substantial cost for those plates. There's a substantial cost for the setup as well, which in turn translates into larger order quantities that you don't necessarily want, right? At that point in time, but to amortize that setup, you need to order more than what you're really going to use. And then it also translates into a lower equipment availability, right? So if not necessarily capacity, but availability. If I'm having to run 10 rolls of preprint at a time to make it cost effective, then it means I'm going to be using my machine all day running one print, right? So turning that into digital, what does digital allow me to do? Well, it's almost the opposite of everything I've been talking about, right? Where does it create value? Well, it creates value by not having to worry about that setup, right? So by eliminating the setup, then order quantity becomes less of an issue, right? I can really reduce my minimum order quantities and go more of to a model where I'm running what you need, not ordering to an inventory to try to hit a price point. Because my price point is going to be very flat whether you order a small quantity or a large quantity. There's no setup to amortize. That also translates into a more flexible supply chain. There's no cost of plates involved, right? So your cost to change print goes closer to zero. It's not quite zero, but it's a lot less, right, than it used to be. So again, it allows you for more flexibility in what you're printing, and the availability part, I think it's not necessarily something that jumps at you, but when I'm not running the same job for a full day, right, and I don't have to worry about putting in an order in the middle of a run because there's no setup. What that does, it makes my equipment more available, right? And what that translates for my customer is my ability to be a lot more responsive, and even if I have certain stated lead times, my ability to do an exception and run for you and do a 24-hour turnaround is there. Whereas before it would have been something really costly, right? It is not as costly to do that once I have a digital press.
Yeah, that's great. And something that I heard throughout that as well is, I mean, all these different advantages of the turnaround time, the ability to switch efficiently between jobs and still have that quick return to customer, and the cost of ownership, all of that is transferable across paperboard, corrugated, and flexible. So this is not just strictly corrugated if Sergio's answering the question, or Ed for paperboard, but a lot of these benefits are really just universal across it all. So thank you, Sergio. I appreciate that. Brian, do you mind sharing a little bit on this question here? So packaging production is often looking to print repeat orders over the life cycle of the product. Has digital production helped you maintain consistency from order to order? So just talk a little bit about the quality of digital print.
It's exactly the same every time I run it, right? It's a digital file, so we're not going in and changing color strategies. We're not worrying about particular ink mixes. It's always going to be the same, and we fingerprint all of our presses, right? So I go back a little bit into redundancy with multiple presses, multiple facilities. I can print here as well as the exact same file that I'm printing in North Carolina at one of my facilities there, and the exact same file that I'm printing in Georgia. It's all the same every day that ends in Y. The file is going to be the same. And I don't have any other channels that I need to set up. It's an email. It's just a file, right? It's so easy. So the quality is consistent, to answer your specific question, because of that, right? The digital presses, HP specifically, have made that easy for us to do that. But there's a lot of other benefits that I was going to talk to, and so I'll just bend your ear for a second here, real quick. So one of the wins is that we're giving SMBs specifically access to beautiful professional packaging that they wouldn't have otherwise, right? And some of the other guests talked about this. If you wanted to buy 5,000 bags, well, we're not going to turn on our 52-inch wide web press for you, right? Unless you want to pay $10 a bag. We're not going to do that, right? I'm not going to do it with my wide web either, right? But now, I call them the mom and pops, not to offend anybody, but those small startups, right? Now they have access. You're giving that customer access to professional packaging that's going to work as good as anybody else's packaging, right? We're going to have the same kind of barriers as everybody else that are using wide web. So that's number one thing. The minimum orders, right? You don't need to order 1 million bags or whatever. Maybe it's roll stock, right? 1 million impressions. You don't need to do that anymore. We'll turn on the presses for some number far less than that, right? At Taylor, our minimum order for pouches is $2,500. Right. Now, if you think about that, if you're a CPG and you want to do a regional release of a product, well, it's a perfect fit for that again, right? And then you can, and if it takes off, great. You've got minimal investment in it. And if you want to go into the wide web, then you transition into the wide web, right? But we've given you that option with the digital solution. The other thing too, when I think about CPGs, I think about SKU proliferation, right? And all those costs that go along with that. So now we've got we start out with a peanut, but we've got 50 different flavors of peanuts, right? So that's SKU proliferation. Digital lends itself to that. It's easy. Again, it's not another set of plates, right? It's another file, right? And you can gang them if you need to gang them, whatever makes sense for you. And then the other big win too is well, there's two other big wins. There's the whole fresh and safe food idea that we don't talk enough about in the food industry, right? Um, you're going to have packaging that's going to work, first of all, and it doesn't have to come from Asia. Heck, if you're in central states, it doesn't even need to come from the West Coast or the East Coast, right? These facilities, these assets require a very small footprint. Okay, so when I think about sustainability, I think big picture sustainability. I don't just think about landfills, right? I think about the footprint size of my building that I need. How much electricity am I going to use, right? How much labor am I going to use? How much water am I going to use? That's real sustainable conversation right there. We can all get behind that and feel good about that. So there's lots of wins. There's wins for the brand, and there's, as well, and there's wins for the supplier throughout the whole supply chain. How do they do? Good?
That's great. Thank you. I
Right.
appreciate you bringing up the sustainability piece as well.
Brian, I just want to follow up on that, on some of what you unpacked. I think you must be feeling now like you have died and gone to hell, having gone from digital to analog with all of the potential for process variation, especially in terms of color. When you look at flexographic presses and litho presses in particular, just monitoring and controlling color on a litho press throughout a long run can be a challenge. You get atmospheric changes, changes to the chemistry, the water balance, etc. Whereas digital, I agree 100%. We've had a customer where we've run about 150 weeks of weekly production, and we make one of their brand colors is green out of the cyan and yellow. And if you look at a carton that's a year old versus one that's printed 2 weeks ago, the process color is identical, and it just doesn't vary. It's mathematics, it's science. Each drop of ink is exactly the same color. When it hits the paper, it goes in exactly the same spot, and it's just it's a beautiful thing from a process control standpoint. So I agree 100% with your assessment there.
Yeah, and you're right. I
Ditto.
do kind of feel like I'm going back in time, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm probably the one guy going backwards, but at the same time, I still have all my digital assets. So when I need to feel upbeat and good about myself, I walk out and stand next to my 200K out there and say, okay, this is how good it all could be.
Yes.
Well, and Brian, you're bringing a good point, right? So, because I mean, to be fair to everyone on the call, right? We love digital because of all the great things it does, but it doesn't fit everything, right?
No, it doesn't.
If you don't have a need that we've outlined, right? If you don't care about long lead times, if you're never changing your print, you have 3 graphic prints that you run all year in millions and millions of quantities, then the best alternative is probably still flexo, right? Or offset. So there is there even though the costs have become very competitive, digital versus analog, there's still a disadvantage, right? Whereas before the disadvantage was, I don't know, 100%. Today we're probably 10 to 15% disadvantage over a long run, right? But so there's still room for analog technologies. If you don't have a use for all the benefits that we're talking about, right? If you don't care about speed to market, if you don't care about cost of changing, if you don't care about big inventories, then there's applications for that too, to be honest, right? But if you don't care about that, then analog is better. If you do care about any of those things, then digital needs to be part of the solution.
Yeah, that's great, Sergio. And that's a great segue into also just talking about some of the challenges that come with adopting digital printing. And I'll open this up to anyone who would like to answer, but just some of the initial challenges you faced when integrating digital print into your operation. I know we've talked before, a lot of you have multiple other analog presses that you've used. So what came with that, and expand more on some of those challenges of adopting digital print?
I'll start. Annette has a lot of war stories. I'm sure I have some as well. And a lot of the challenges at the beginning, quite honestly, had to do just with the equipment and the technology not being ready yet, right? And I mentioned that because I think we've come a huge way since where we were 7 years ago, right? The inksets have changed, the varnishes we use have changed, the coatings we use are changed, even the actual print heads that we use have changed, right? We've learned a lot in those 7 years. And I think now the technology can actually deliver to what we're talking, right? Before, it could deliver some of the time, but not all of the time, right? Now we're getting to a point where it's a lot more reliable, and that we can actually trust the technology to be able to do this at high volumes, right? At industrial scale. So I think that's something to say. I think the other part of this all is obviously digital is exciting, it's new, we all get excited, and we think it's really, really new, right? And a lot of the challenge has been just educating everyone that it's just another form of printing, and that it's ultimately gonna look. I mean, you still need to go through the same steps you did before when you're. I mean, there's a lot of things that we cut off, right? We don't need plates. It's easier to approve. It's a file. That is correct, right? But we still need to make a box, right? We still need. It's just another form of making a box. So you don't just think an idea and digitally we can create the idea, right? You still need a CAD for a box. We still need to go through the process of approving a graphic. And the more we can think about digital as just another form of printing, there's nothing magical about it necessarily, right? Because sometimes there's too much fear because it's new. But the more we can educate our customers that it's just another form of printing and that you're going to get the exact same results, right? If not better because of the consistency, the better off we are. So that I think one of the challenges going in is just educating everyone and making everyone feel comfortable that it's just another way of printing, and there's no fundamental changes to the function, to the form and function of the box, whether it's printed one way or the other.
That's great. Education is the key, right? And that's why we're on here having this discussion today to really just talk about all of the benefits, challenges, and opportunities of utilizing this new technology and understanding that it is just another tool to support business growth. Brian, what were some of the challenges for you coming into the digital printing world, and what are some of the challenges you saw with digital printing?
Well, it was the only world I knew when I got into it, right? So it was more from a, I have to think back to my EPAC days. It was more along the sales cycle, right? For selling digital and trying to, if you're talking to buyers at a particular brand, right? And I don't know if any buyers are on here, but typically they just want to get something off their desk as fast as they can. They don't really want to talk about the benefits that you're bringing to the table in all the cases, right? Unless it's a financial benefit to them. So, breaking that barrier to start talking about digital and lead times. While I don't know that it was difficult, but it was one of the first conversations you had to have. If a brand is used to that long lead time, cheap price, right? Don't really care about the quality. You got to push through that with the customers. Now the SMBs, easy conversation, right? You make it as easy as buying a business card, really. So that in my mind was the easy part. But those mid-size and up customers were a little bit more difficult. So that was the challenge for sure. And I think Ryan, one of the guests here, was asking about when you're having those conversations and the resistance that you get. I certainly have seen that now going in the opposite direction, right? Like, well, no, this is how we've always done it. And, I'm like, okay, but, that's old thinking and that doesn't work anymore, right? The customers have changed, right? Maybe the food producers haven't quite changed yet, but your customer has changed. And so if you're a smart cat, you play that and understand the game that the customer is now playing. It's a lot different than it was even 10 years ago. For sure. So
I have a follow-up question to that. So you mentioned the sales process for digital was a little bit different, but I wanted to ask what changes were required in your organization. And Brian, you're kind of reverse thinking back to a digital day versus now at Taylor where you have a mixed group of assets. But for anybody on Brian, Sergio, Ed, what changes do you think, or what changes have been required in the organization, whether it's ramping up sales or having a completely different sales arm, pre-press?
Yeah,
What have you seen?
I can tell you real quick, and I'll let you go. But um, what I have seen is a struggle with the flexo, the analog salespeople not being subject matter experts at all, right? And when we bring on the digital is so easy that we can make them subject matter experts in all things packaging quickly, right? They're not trying to learn all the 50 different processes to do this analog, right? And understand what all the different structures are. So I find it much easier to start someone out in digital and now transition them into analog. But then they're growing with their customer, which is kind of what you want to do, right? As you help them grow their business, you're going to grow them into that next level. Like Sergio mentioned, they're going to need at some point today, right? They're going to need to get to that next level of printing. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'd follow up on that and one of Sergio's comments in terms of, customers really don't care how you print a box or a bag. They want it to look like they want it to look. They want it cost like they want it to cost within reason, and they want it delivered on time. And so we try to take our salespeople, and it's very culturally difficult for them because they hear digital and they see a digital press and they think, oh, well, that's great for short run stuff, and then we'll sell the long run stuff on the big flexos or lithos, and it really couldn't be. I mean, that's conceptually true, but it's the middle ground that really concerns us, and what we view the digital assets as is just another instrument, sort of in the band or the symphony or what have you, where if you play a digital machine all by itself and you can do a electric guitar solo, that's nice, but it's better if you've got a bass and drums and maybe some violins in the background as well. And so it's about blending all of those together, and that's what's very difficult culturally to get through to our sales group. It's also difficult to get through to our customers sometimes, is that we'll decide how to run things, as long as we can hit the covers and make the deliveries, and it is a challenge, but I do agree with Brian. It's a much easier challenge when you're dealing with the people going from digital to analog after that, and they don't have all the baggage that the analog people bring to the party.
So let's talk about some opportunities, or really untapped opportunities, that you all see that you want to promote and encourage these brands to use by leveraging digital printing to enhance brand storytelling or enhance engagement with consumers.
I mean, I mean, the possibilities are almost, I'm going to say endless, right? Very cliche, but
But they are.
but they are, right? I mean, you're really taking a lot of the constraints out of the table, and you're limited by I guess your ability to create content and to have ideas of what you want to use the different packaging um you know types as a way to communicate to customers, right? So um there's very simple stuff, right? Like just on the way you design art, instead of creating solid backgrounds with a blob of color, which is what traditionally has been done in packaging, because that's what analog technologies, particularly Flexo, which is the cheapest one, is good at, just covering stuff with ink, right? So that's why we have so many solid backgrounds, right? Now you don't need to have a solid background if you don't want to. You can have a background that has texture, that adds depth to that package, that it's a process image that looks a lot nicer and upper scale, and that gives you so much more ability to tell something with that package, right? So that is just one dimension in which digital could enhance your storytelling on a box, and I think it's not being fully utilized, right?
Mhm.
The other one is what everyone gets excited, but I think it's more difficult to execute, which is start getting, you know, variable data, variable printing, different images. And, those are all open opportunities, right? It just requires a lot more upfront work from the brand to really think through how they're going to execute that. The technology is ready to do that, but you need to really think through how you're going to execute not only on the printing, but actually at the retail, right? How are you going to use that variable data? How are you going to leverage that ability to create impact to your consumers at the end of the day?
Great,
Yeah,
thank you.
I'd agree 100% with that, Sergio. We've done a few variable print promotions. Like the most notable one, I think, was where we were working with the Smucker company on their milk bones, and we were allowing consumers to upload pictures of their dogs, their mutts, their cats, whatever, and then have those appear on the actual Milk-Bone boxes. And that required about 6 to 7 months of upfront work between us and Smucker, the development of the website, their omni-channel marketing with, like the Today Show and all this stuff. So it's a lot of work. But and that'll continue. I think it's great for engagement. But where I see and what excites me the most now about digital packaging is that of the marriage between digital packaging and artificial intelligence, where the technology is out there now where you don't need a million boxes all the same. You could have AI literally develop a million boxes all different as long as our RIPs can handle it and keep up. And so I wish that, 10 years ago I was a prophet and I said, oh, this is where the future is going. But it's better to be lucky than good or lucky than smart. But now with AI, we're already working with some of the large CPGs on some AI powered variable print. We've already got some, without naming any names and embarrassing anybody, but we already have some packaging in the market, the graphics for which were generated with AI, nothing on a variable scale. But we think that's just a super exciting chapter in print. I think it'll be as big as digital was, and without high speed digital, high throughput digital, you can't do anything with AI that's any fun. So that's what we're really looking forward to. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I think next quarter we're going to have the same webinar and maybe take a deeper dive into AI with a lot of help from our friends at HP, who I will throw some flowers their way. They are really on top of the game in terms of AI and incorporating that into digital print. So it's great that they're a part of this webinar series, I think, and there'll be a lot more to come. But really, AI and digital is a huge opportunity for excitement in our world, I
Yeah.
think.
And it just to follow up, I think that's just the next step in the continuum of bringing this cost to change to zero, right? Because right now, digital has brought close to zero the cost of printing, right? Now we need to bring to zero the cost of originating the art, and that's exactly what you're talking about, right?
Mhm. All right, we've got just a few minutes left, and we've got some questions that have been sent in ahead of time, which a lot of those questions were answered throughout the webinar. So I appreciate all of you who inspired some of the content for this webinar. And just coming in recently, we have from Carlos, can you share insights on proofing? In some cases, it can be challenging for creatives to approve digital files without samples. My question is, how do you address this potential iteration challenges with your customers?
I'll go. One is just establishing trust, right? Trust that the proof that comes out of a FM proofer, right? Your contract proof, it's gonna look exactly the same as the output that's coming from the digital press, right? And I was surprised at the beginning, but it's just two different digital um, output machines outputting the same output, right? So once you can educate whoever's doing that and understand that it's gonna look the same, that's the easiest way to do the proofing, right? The easiest way to do the proofing is just to do a contract proof, because the quality of that contract proof, as long as you're practicing best practices of color management and whatnot, it's going to be exactly the same as what you get out of the press.
And
Great, thank you.
one way we handle that, we either will use a calibrated Epson proof send that off. But more typically, if it's a job that we know is going to be pure digital, we'll go ahead and just print one off the digital press on the substrate and FedEx that to the customer and let them see. And that's proven to be pretty effective. And that way they see that it's not a proof, it's the real deal. It looks exactly like they want. If they want to make an adjustment, they can say, I'll make it a little darker, greener, lighter, whatever, what have you, and send out another proof. And then we're done, and they get exactly what they've seen and touched.
That's exactly what we do too. We'll do one impression, send that on the structure that they've chosen. We'll also send partial or pieces of the laminate structures as well, so they can lay that out and they're going to see exactly what they're going to get.
Great, thank you all. I am setting up our poll in our chat. We do have another question that I would like to answer. Does the 1-color versus 4-color versus 6-color cost difference go away with digital? That's from Barrett.
Yes.
That depends. I mean, with our good dear friends at HP, CMYK colors are a pretty low price. And then if you get into the expanded gamut colors, like the orange in particular, the price of ink is roughly the equivalent of a nice bottle of Scotch whiskey. So if you need an expanded gamut color to hit your trade dress brand color, it might require an upcharge. And what we can typically do is give people samples where here's CMYK, here's CMYK plus orange and violet, and here's the cost difference. Which one do you like? Which one are you willing to pay for?
Yeah, I think I'm for the most part, the number of colors doesn't become the driver unless you have to get to an expanded gamut like it is talking, right? But it's more, so it's not about the number of colors, it's about the amount of ink coverage, right? So that's what ultimately drives cost in digital, right? So if you have less ink, it's cheaper to manufacture than if you have a lot of ink. If you have some of the backgrounds that I was talking about, right? Instead of solid background, there will be less ink there and potentially a better box, right? So that the driver becomes the amount of ink.
Or I
Great.
guess, Brian, are you in click mode over there, or are you in ink volume?
What time of day is it? No, we're in digital. We're in click mode, right? But there are several ways to play this game, right? If I can get to a particular color strategy with 3 colors, I'm going to get there with 3 colors, right? And it goes really to how much ink you're putting down. Again, Sergio's right about that. And then in flexible packaging, because we're laminating to multiple structures at times. I can take white completely out of the picture and just laminate to a white structure, PE, right? Or my barriers can be white or metallized and things of that nature. So there's a number of ways to get there for
Now,
sure.
I would add something, right? So this conversation is absolutely true, right? But I don't love to have this conversation with my customers because it's not your problem, right? It's really our problem, right? Uh, I'd like to drive this conversation based on how we create value for you, right? So ultimately, what do you want the package to look like? And it's our job to figure out how to get there in the most cost-effective way. And I believe that this is a temporary discussion in terms of the colors, because I think as adoption continues, those numbers are going to continue to go down, right? And the difference in ink costs, right? The delta between analog inks and digital inks has been shrinking and will continue to shrink as time goes by, to the point where I don't think there's going to be a problem or a difference, right?
Yeah, I think you touched upon it too, Sergio. How we get there is up to what's happening in the factory, right? I think that's the old analog way of thinking, right? Is ink color and how much and all of that. I think digital that goes away. We'll get to your color, right? One way or the other.
Yes.
Great. Well, we are at the end of our time today. I really appreciate you all joining us for this session. And if you haven't already, please head to the chat box and cast your vote on our question regarding a topic for one of our upcoming webinars. So I just want to thank all of our panelists for sharing your insights and expertise today. Your contributions and personalities have made this discussion both informative and engaging. And we also just want to thank everyone in the audience for joining us and asking such great questions. And if you have asked a question that has not been answered yet, we will try to make sure that we get in touch with you after the webinar. We will be sending a recording of this webinar out to everyone who has registered. So thanks again for your participation. This has really made the event even more meaningful. So we look forward to hearing your thoughts on what our next topic should be in our upcoming webinar, and we're looking forward to continuing this conversation in future webinar episodes. So keep an eye out for announcements on the next webinar in our series, The Digital Future of Packaging, and we look forward to continuing this conversation in 2025. So thank you all and happy holidays.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Allie.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thanks, guys.